Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Analysis. I'm Arfan Ali. President Donald Trump, speaking to journalists on Air Force One, has proposed a mass movement of a plan for Gaza, for the Gazans, into Jordan and Egypt. The idea was roundly rejected by the Egyptian, Jordanian foreign ministers and by Hamas officials. We have this report on the situation.
As tens of thousands of displaced Palestinians were blocked from going home to northern Gaza on Sunday, many rejected a suggestion by US President Donald Trump for Jordan and Egypt to take in Gazans, either temporarily or permanently. Trump told reporters on Saturday he asked Jordan's King Abdullah during a call to take people from Gaza, describing the war-torn enclave as a demolition site. He added that he was set to speak to Egypt's president on Sunday. Trump said he wanted to get Arab nations to build housing at a different location for Gazans, suggesting, quote, "We just clean out that whole thing." One Hamas official told Reuters Palestinians would reject any such offers, even if they, quote, "appear to have good intentions under the guise of reconstruction." The remark echoes the people's long-standing fears about being driven permanently from their homes. Palestinian analyst Ghassan al-Khatib said he believes Trump is looking to resolve Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's political woes over the war.
I think this dramatic statement from President Trump about transferring Palestinians from Gaza into Jordan and Egypt came in order to try to rescue Netanyahu from sinking in the sands of Gaza. And I don't think that there is a place in reality for such an idea.
Jordan's foreign minister said on Sunday the country was firm in its stance against any displacement of Palestinians from Gaza, and Egypt has expressed a similar stance several times before. In central Gaza, this Palestinian said he completely rejected Trump's proposed solution, while another displaced man slammed it as a futile attempt to drive us away from our Palestinian land. They were among the many northern Gazans who had been stuck at roadblocks trying to get home, while mediators held talks with Hamas and Israel to resolve a dispute over the ceasefire deal. Israel had refused to reopen checkpoints to the north, saying the Palestinian militant group failed to release a hostage on Saturday or hand over a list of details about captives who were alive, while Hamas blamed Israel for the delay, accusing it of stalling. Though later on Sunday, sources told Reuters agreements had been struck over the release of the Israeli woman captive, with reports of progress in the ongoing talks.
Omar Shakir from Human Rights Watch criticised the proposal. He suggested it implies large-scale forced displacement, while Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur, condemned the idea as illegal, immoral and irresponsible, equating it to ethnic cleansing. While tens of thousands of Palestinians streamed along the main roads leading north in Gaza on Monday, jubilant to be returning home after months of living in temporary shelters, but fearing what might remain of their homes and the bombed-out ruins. We have this report.
Twins Mahmoud and Ibrahim Alatout hug after a year of separation. Palestinians streamed back into northern Gaza on Monday, with Israel giving them the green light to return as part of the Gaza ceasefire deal. Mohammed Audi reunited with his parents and brother as they returned after being displaced for more than a year.
It's better than the whole world. It's a great victory to see my mother, father and brother. Praise to God. I have been away from them for 1 year and 4 months. I was alone in the north here. They were all in the south.
Northern Gaza's devastated landscape of crushed concrete and twisted metal is where some of the most intense Israeli airstrikes and battles with militants took place. Mohammed Arifi said being away was like death.
When I get back to Gaza City, I will come back to life. I swear to God, the feeling is indescribable. To see my family, my people, my neighborhood, where I was raised and where I lived.
Under the terms of the ceasefire, residents of northern Gaza were due to return at the weekend. But Israel said Palestinian militant group Hamas had breached the deal by failing to release civilian female hostage Arbel Yahoud in a second exchange at the weekend. So, as displaced Gazans slept on the road waiting to be allowed to head north, Israel kept its forces deployed in the Netzarim corridor that separates the north from the rest of the enclave. That was until Qatari mediators resolved the dispute late Sunday. Hamas agreed to release Yehud and 2 other hostages 2 days before the next scheduled release. The group said on Monday it had also handed over to mediators a list showing that 25 Israeli hostages are still alive, out of 33 scheduled for release. The war has killed at least 47,000 Palestinians, according to Gaza's health ministry. It displaced most Gazans, many several times, including 650,000 people forced to leave northern Gaza. The ceasefire deal also requires 600 truckloads of aid to be allowed into Gaza every day of the initial 6-week ceasefire, including 50 carrying fuel. Half should head north, where experts have warned famine is imminent.
As the mass movement of people continues, a Human Rights Watch report reveals that Israel's blockade and attacks on Gaza since October 2003 have severely endangered pregnant women and girls. The blockade, aid restrictions and destruction of healthcare facilities have left women without essential care, causing preventable deaths to increase by 300% of miscarriages. Overcrowded hospitals and shortage of supplies has forced up to 5 babies to share one single incubator. The report urges Israel's allies to pressure the government to meet international law, obligations and ensuring access to healthcare and basic needs. The report highlights the displacement of 90% of Gaza's population, making healthcare access nearly impossible. Pregnant women face severe food and water shortages, worsening health risks like anemia and sepsis. Despite a ceasefire, the crisis persists with new Israeli laws threatening UNRWA operations and Israel's wanting to ban UNRWA in the region. Human Rights Watch calls for the international government to suspend military aid, support accountability efforts and ensure essential resources reach Gaza, stressing that the ceasefire alone is insufficient to resolve the crisis. As attention begins to shift to the challenges regarding rebuilding the devastated enclave, we have this report on the Palestinians returning to their shattered homes.
Many Gazans displaced by war returned to their hometowns on Monday, only to find everything demolished. In central Gaza's Al Bureij, this man said the area looked like it was hit by a devastating earthquake. And it's even worse in North Gaza, another man said. After a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas took effect on Sunday, attention now shifts to the rebuilding of the coastal enclave. A United Nations damage assessment released this month estimated that 50 million tons of rubble have been left in the aftermath of Israel's bombardment. That could take 21 years to clear and cost up to $1.2 billion. Some of the debris is also believed to be contaminated with asbestos. Meanwhile, a growth in the flow of aid has come as great relief for Gazans who have been battling hunger and the winter cold. Desperate residents were seen rushing towards trucks carrying food and fuel from across the Rafah border on Monday. 600 truckloads of aid are now allowed into Gaza every day of the initial 6-week ceasefire. Half of the aid trucks will be delivered to the north, where experts have warned famine is imminent. After 15 months of war, many are just happy for some quiet. This mother of 9 described her family's first night of feeling at ease without the constant sounds of bombing and ambulance sirens. But the heaviness of war still weighs on her. There will be scars because we lost so many of our beloved ones, she said. There will be as much sadness and pain as there is joy.
Joining us to discuss this is Ahmed Ben Shamsi from the Human Rights Watch and Osama Nazar from the Palestinian Affairs correspondent from the West Bank. I'll start with you, Osama. Can you describe the scenes in the West Bank? We've seen attacks continue in the West Bank itself. We've seen raids into the territory, and we've seen those who have been released in this exchange of hostages for prisoners or hostages for hostages. We've seen that more people have been taken into prison by the Israeli or the occupying forces. So can you give us a sense of what's been happening?
Yeah, once the Israeli occupation government froze its aggression and its war on Gaza, it moved to the occupied West Bank, starting what the occupation government calls Iron Wall operation, which is fierce Israeli aggression on the Palestinian people in the northern part of the occupied West Bank, starting with Jenin city, Jenin refugee camp, and Jenin villages. And yesterday, they expanded the aggression against Tul Karim and Tul Karim refugee camp. Israel killed close to 20 Palestinians since the start of this aggression that started more than a week ago and injured over 55 others. Apart, Israel destroyed most of the infrastructure in Jenin city and Tul Karim and removed large parts of Jenin refugee camp, and now is doing the same to Tul Karim refugee camp.
Do you know why the Israeli forces are doing this to Jenin?
Yeah, this Israeli aggression is not new against the Palestinian people. They are starting in Jenin, but it is more expansive, it's including all of the occupied West Bank. As they bombard Jenin and Tul Karim, they close the rest of the Palestinian cities in the occupied West Bank. Uh, uh, they erected 900 checkpoints in the occupied West Bank, and they erected gates at the entrance of every Palestinian city. And if a Palestinian wants to travel from Ramallah to Jenin, for example, or from Ramallah to Nablus, which is not more than half an hour drive, it may take you 5 hours and 6 hours. So it is like a massive curfew on all of the Palestinian people. The aim is clear. Israel is doing everything repulsive in order to force the Palestinian people out under what Israel calls voluntary migration. They want the Palestinian people, mainly the young generation, to lose any hope, to have no opportunity in the homeland, in Palestine, and start thinking of abandoning Palestine in order to allow for the foreign Jewish settlers to come from the Americans and from Europe, from all the world, and live in the occupied Palestinian territory.
Yeah, I think you were referring to Israeli settlers. They're coming in because we've seen an increase of where Trump was giving a kind of carte blanche to Israeli settlers as part of the kind of negotiations that he's having internally with his rapporteur into the territories itself. Now, coming on to the actual movement of people to northern Gaza, can you describe the situation, how the people are feeling returning to their ruined homes, Osama?
The march of return, the great march of return from the south to the north of Gaza, reflects the determination and the resilience of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian people passion for their homeland. You know, and all the world knows that the people moving from the south to the north are going to an area that has been completely destroyed by the Israeli warplanes and the Israeli tanks. They are going to be homeless and helpless there as Israel destroyed everything in addition to the hospitals, the mosque, and all life facilities. But despite this situation, we saw how passionate the Palestinians are and how much love they have for their land. And they were stating all the time during their journey that even they know that they are going to find their houses reduced to rubble, but they are going there and they are going to start their life anew with hope that the word, the free word, the good word won't leave them alone and would help them to rebuild their homes and their life.
I would like to bring in Ahmed Ben Shamsi now from Human Rights Watch. Ahmed, your report that you've released recently, or in fact today, in regards to neonatal care, can you give us an indication of what's in this report and why is it significant?
Well, in this report, we document how the blockade and the conduct of war mostly impacted maternal and newborn health in Gaza. I mean, obviously, it impacted everybody, and we have issued many reports before documenting what we call the crime against humanity, which is the forced displacement of pretty much all of Gaza's population in conditions that violate pretty much every rule in the book when it comes to conduct of hostilities and the treatment of civilians. We have also released a report, sorry, about the access to water, calling the impediment to access to water a genocidal act. So this is only the latest report, and this time we are focusing on women, on pregnant women, on conditions of pregnancy and natality. So because of Israel's blockade on Gaza and attacks on hospitals, the vast majority of pregnant women are unable to receive any kind of prenatal medical care, and they do not have access to as well to nutritious food or clean water, which is the case for everyone in Gaza, but is particularly needed when you are a pregnant woman. These conditions significantly endanger the health of their pregnancy, and the health conditions, are worsened by deprivations and can cause anemia, hemorrhage, sepsis, all of which can be treated normally when there's a normal medical system functioning, but in the absence of such a system, they can be fatal, both to the mother and to the fetus in her belly. Also, there are mental health implications because the mental health, again, of all inhabitants of Gaza, but in particular, that's the focus of our report, of pregnant women, has been under immense stress since the start of the hostilities. And because of the attacks on healthcare facilities, very few of Gaza's hospitals are actually functioning. And the very few that are functioning are overcrowded. The quality of the care provided is extremely poor because they lack everything. So imagine that when a woman goes into labor, well, first they have to reach the hospital, which is often very difficult because the hospital, I mean, there are very few of them. The roads are unsafe, unclear. They are filled with rubble. There's no transportation. And once they get there, God knows how, they give birth in often in unsanitary conditions and overcrowded rooms, and they are very quickly rushed out a few hours after giving birth to make room for other patients, many of them war casualties. So it's I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. It's a nightmare scenario that we have documented.
The UN has said that this will take up to 21 years to clear the rubble. You've got the wreckage and the rubbish that you can see during the onslaught. It's also going to cost billions to repair Gaza itself. What do you see the kind of interim steps that your report is recommending for these pregnant women and these children?
Well, the interim step that is needed for everybody, not just for pregnant women, is that Israel immediately allows full, unrestricted, complete access to humanitarian aid. That is what is needed right now for pregnant women, but also for babies, for children, for civilians, for everyone. They have to open all the border crossings. They have to let all the medical aid that can get inside Gaza, and they have to remove all restrictions on the entrance of medical workers, including reproductive health workers, since we're talking about pregnant women, but not just them, mental health specialists as well, because we have a traumatized population. All of these, health specialists and health, workers should be let in immediately without any restrictions. Also, I mean, to make it simple, Israel should lift its siege because it's unlawful. It has been unlawful for a decade and a half, like 17 years, and it's still unlawful. It should open all the border crossings. We said that, and it should. The donor governments should never stop pressuring Israel to do all these things.
Osama, we've seen President Trump float this idea of the people of Gaza moving into Egypt and also Jordan, which is roundly rejected by the foreign ministers. What is the reaction of the people in Palestine, Gaza, West Bank to this kind of proposal?
Yeah, the response of the Palestinian people has always been clear. You saw that Israel killed and injured about 200,000 Palestinian citizens of Gaza. And despite all the horrors, despite all the forms of death that Israel forced on the Palestinian people in Gaza, they held on to their homeland and they lived under the tents for more than 475 days. And they are still living in tents because they have no houses as Israel demolished everything. But they continued to refuse any form of expulsion and any form of displacement, because that is the principle of every Palestinian in Gaza, the West Bank, 1948, Jerusalem. Our ancestors and our forefathers have lived and died in this land, and there is no substitute, no alternative land for Palestine. And the only solution is that Trump, Netanyahu, the whole world recognize the right of the Palestinian people to live in peace, freedom, and security, not on any other piece of land, but in Palestine, the homeland of the Palestinian people, the people who were evicted from their villages and towns, not only during this war, but during the Palestinian Nakba, the war of 1948, when the British power and other Western colonial powers replaced the Palestinian people who were living in Haifa, Jaffa, Safad, and Akka with foreign settlers coming from Europe.
Now, we've seen the devastation that we, across the whole of Gaza itself, buildings destroyed, 21 years to remove the rubble, according to the UN, infrastructure completely decimated, more than 40,000 lives lost, and those remaining under the rubble. What do you think other organizations should be doing to reconstruct Gaza itself?
Yeah, at first this shows that the ceasefire deal is not the end, but it is the start, and much work is required now. From all the friends, the brothers of the Palestinian people, and from all those who work for justice and the humanity. The situation in Gaza is unimaginable, as over 75% of the buildings of Gaza were either razed to the ground or damaged, and it is no longer fit for a human habitation. So much is needed from all the concerned parties on this planet to help the people in Gaza to remove the rubble and to rebuild housing units and the schools and hospitals in order to enable the Palestinians to reform their society just as it was before the war and before the start of the Israeli occupation siege, because it is important for all to know that Gaza has been suffering not only since October 23, but much before, as Israel imposed its tightened siege on Gaza in 2006.
On that point, I'd like to thank Osama Nazem from the West Bank, a correspondent based there. Thank you so much. And also like to thank Ahmed Ben Shamsi for Human Rights Watch. Thank you so much. And this has been Analysis, and I've been Arfan Ali.